Every great business starts with an idea, a spark of inspiration, a single note in a world full of noise. But ideas alone aren't enough. Growth takes risk. It takes struggle. It takes showing up even when things don't go as planned. There's a version of AI adoption in the MSP world that looks like automate everything, scale fast, and get efficient. And then there's another version, one where you use all that same technology, but you never lose sight of the fact that your clients are people, not accounts. My guest today has been building that second version for nearly 20 years. Welcome to the MSP Growth Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Matthew Harvey, founder and CEO of Stepping Forward Technology, and they're out of Colorado Springs, Colorado. Matthew has been running his MSP since 2006, nearly 2 decades, built it as a family business alongside his wife Jennifer, and has grown it into a company that serves healthcare, construction, manufacturing, aerospace, and financial clients across Colorado. He was recently named a finalist for the MSP Titans of the Industry AI Powered Award, which we are absolutely going to talk about. But most importantly, we're going to dig into how you build a company that leads with AI without losing what makes you worth calling in the first place. Matthew, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks. It's always fun to share these stories. So
Absolutely. So let's take us back to 2006. You've got experience as a systems administrator and a network administrator. What made you to decide to build your own thing rather than keep climbing the ladder somewhere else?
yeah, I was a typical IT guy turned business owner, but in my story, it was accidental. Like I didn't inspire to be an entrepreneur. I was passionate about IT, but the company I worked for, they just had a lot of issues and a lot of wrong systems and no automation. Even back then, you could automate a lot, and And so I was the only one allowed in the company, like unlimited overtime, just keep the systems running. And that meant long nights and weekends sometimes to make sure that things were functioning. It was a pretty complex network. There were people logging in throughout the United States, so different time zones and long hours to keep things running. So uptime was important. But after working there for 4 years, I just learned a lot about how to set up systems properly, like have good alignment with technology, and then being able to just automate a bunch of things. So like getting the right systems, the right processes, and automation took my job down to about 11 hours a month. There was sometimes a little more than that, but it was just like I was like the IT guy for I don't know, at the time it was like a 30-person company with a lot of time on my hands. So they were like trying to help give me like other tasks to do, like marketing and things like that, which wasn't really my passion. But it was the inspiration to start Stepping Forward Technology. Well, that was the first inspiration. But I didn't actually start an MSP right away. I went to work for another MSP, and I worked for them for a year. And one of the things that I found was that there was a real disconnect with, I think a lot of people don't understand IT. And so a lot of MSP owners, I wouldn't say that a lot of them, but there are definitely some, the one I worked for, could take advantage of that. And I just felt like I was representing someone who wasn't honest. And that just grated so hard on my nerves. And I felt like, wow, the only way I can solve this is if I had my own business and I could do it, because things don't go right, but I could always make it right. Like you can always go back and figure out how to make things right. So that was the driving force to like start Stepping Forward Technology.
Oh, that's great. And I think an extension of that, you describe yourself as a servant leader, which is someone who serves your team, your clients. Was that a philosophy you came in with right from that beginning? It sounds like that was always part of the driving
I
force
would
of the
actually,
business.
yeah, I would say not really.
Hey,
Maybe I had like good ethics on my side, but I had
yeah.
no clue what it meant to be a leader. I was the IT guy. I knew tech, and that was what I was passionate about. And so that kind of segues into like the next chapter in my business, which is where we were operating. I pretty much felt like I created 3 jobs for 3 people, me and 2 others. And I was just working in the business all the time. And everybody was kind of siloed. They got really niche in supporting certain customers and had strong relationships. And my first hire was my best friend at the time, and we were going to build this great business. That was actually doomed to fail. I didn't know it, but he inspired to be a business owner. He always wanted to be a business owner, but he couldn't take the risk. So he ended up working for me instead of me working for him. And I think over maybe a period of 3 to 4 years, like there was some resentment that was settling in. And
Mm.
I had no idea. As a IT guy focused on tech, I didn't know that there were cracks in the foundation. So the catalyst that really changed things was his wife got cancer, and he had four little daughters, beautiful girls, and it was just one of those things where he was in a hard place. So wasn't as reliable as an employee anymore. But my heart really went out to him. I felt like freshly married. We were on our second year of marriage, my wife and I. And so I kept thinking, like, what would I want if it was Jen, my wife, that had cancer and I had kids and stuff? I would like want good income, flexible time, flexible schedule. So I was like putting together like a contractual agreement that he could work what and when he wanted, however, and get paid really well for that time. Not knowing that he had 6 months earlier started a competing business and was already talking to my clients. Feel the waters, I think was how he put it. And so when I sat down to meet with him, he said, I'm not interested in what you have to say. And he slid a sheet of paper across the table and said, these are the clients I'm taking.
Oh.
It felt like my best friend died. And I'm probably not the only one to have some form of betrayal, in their existence. It's probably more common. But that was really painful. And it took me a year or two, I feel like, to be able to fully forgive him, where I don't hold resentment anymore. Like I wouldn't trust him again. He's not my best friend anymore, right? But I'm not like, I'm not holding that over him anymore. And that took some time to get there. But yeah, that was the first piece. The second piece that I think was really helpful, and I'm glad I got here, was I realized a good leader, like this never would have happened. Like there's a lot that I didn't know, and I needed to figure out what I didn't know so that this could not happen to me again. Like I think a better version of me as a leader would have known that there was problems. We've been having conversations. I would have helped him start his business. It would have been collaborative. It could have been really great,
Mm.
and it would not so detrimental. So the lesson I learned from there was that I needed to learn what it meant to be an entrepreneur in all the areas. So
Mm.
yeah, I set
Yeah.
out to get a bunch of audiobooks on Audible, on leadership, finance, just all kinds of topics, culture, things like that. And that put me on a really nice trajectory of growth and learning and figuring out how to best like apply those things in my business. And that's kind of people can learn things, but you got to figure out how to apply it.
It is amazing going into something with a betrayal like that to be able to look at it as a learning moment is a huge growth mindset, and not everybody has that, and it's so important to do. And yeah, I'm sure it took a year or two. And yeah, these things do happen. These betrayals do happen very often in business, and it always feels personal, even when we don't want it to, but it always does in some way, especially when you're working with friends and family. But great to be able to pick yourself up and move forward. I also think that even really great leaders, these kind of things happen because you need to have that certain amount of trust in the people that are around you, that they aren't going to do this kind of thing. And sometimes you get burned in the process, but at the same time, you are continuing to trust people so that they feel like they can grow and have some autonomy in their decisions. Because otherwise, it's so hard because then you feel like you must control everything and know everything. And that's so hard because you kind of get burned by that one person and then it's hard
Yeah.
to let go. So, did you feel that at all? Was it hard to trust again?
Um, Not really. I think I
That's great.
naturally, by nature, I tend to be a trusting person and an easy
Mm.
person to take advantage of. I
Mm.
actually felt like I had to be more prudent and not being
Mm.
over trusting so that this kind of thing wouldn't happen again.
Yeah.
And having like healthy boundaries. I remember my first job was at CompUSA, and my manager forgot to give me a review, which meant he also forgot to give me a raise. And at the 2 year mark, I mentioned I still haven't gotten a raise, and so I had found a new job, and he's just like his comment to that was like, "Huh," and so like That's an example of bad leadership, right? Like
Mm,
never made it right and never said oops, never said I'm sorry, nothing like that. And so it's moments like that that I feel like I've taken some lessons that I've learned to know what it's like to be on
yeah,
the receiving end of, like just not following through on your word and,
yeah,
not, yeah. So they obviously wanted to give me a raise then, but I had a job that was going to pay like twice what I was making.
right.
So I was training my replacement who was getting paid more than me, and like I think this kind of comes down to one of the things that I started to learn was like what leadership really looks like good
Mm,
leadership. And there's just a massive lack of good leaders in the world.
so
And
true.
another thing I would also share, and I think
Yeah.
this also helped shape our culture, was we I loved IT and I wanted to do what I love. And the story behind that was I remember my friend's dad, I was probably 7, would come back so grumpy every day from work. And I would ask him, why is your dad so grumpy all the time? He's like, once he's gets some time away from work, he's fine. But he is so stressed and hates his job and he's just really grumpy. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be that person. So I chose
Mm,
to do like the IT career when I was 9. And then I went into corporate America and I found that I wasn't enjoying the things that I loved anymore. And I'm like, how could this be? How
mm,
could a job take something you're passionate and love and then turn it into something you don't enjoy anymore? And I really think the answer is it comes down to like the leadership, which directly affects the culture in the environment. So that became, maybe it wasn't at the ground level, but that became, especially after that moment with my best friend and what happened there, where I'm like, I'm in business for my team.
yeah.
I'm in business for them,
Mm,
to create opportunities for them to grow and to learn and to excel and to have fun doing it. I want them
mm,
to leave not just better techs, but better husbands, better wives, better individuals, better contributors in the world, more financially savvy. Like I want them to grow in
mm.
like all the ways that we can. And so I feel like the company has become like a platform for me to do that. But it didn't all happen all at once. Like some of this stuff, I still had more lessons to learn to get to where we are today.
I'm sure. I'm sure. So, how are some of the ways we have it? It goes into we have very similar. I think we started a company because we were looking to help change a little piece of our corner of the world. It
Hmm.
was just like if we could help some people go to work and be happy. And if an employee is quiet, it doesn't mean they're necessarily happy. And if they're not owed a raise right now, I think we're going to give them one anyway because I would rather be proactive with that than reactive and trying to think of all of the things that could happen and being really proactive with our offerings. So, some of the lists that you gave about them being better husbands, better wives, more financially savvy, how do you go about that?
Like as a boss, it's weird because there's this like professional balance and this personal balance,
Mm,
but it's not uncommon that somebody will stay late. I'm at the office, working late like entrepreneurs do, right? And
yeah,
someone will stay late and they'll come into my office and ask me a question. Or, sometimes it even happens during the working hours where they're like, I want to buy a house and I have no idea how to make this happen. And we'll sit down together and we'll work through a budget, that actually puts them on a track to be able to buy a house. So that's one of the things we celebrate is like,
yeah,
especially in this economy, in this market, that, when someone gets to buy a house and, their family's not in an apartment anymore and they have a backyard and a dog living the American dream. So, yeah, I think people know that I care about them so much that we end up crossing those lines. And I've
yeah,
been pretty good about wearing those different hats, even with like my best friend. Like I'd put on my best friend hat and we'd go out and have fun. And then I'd put on my work hat and I'd hold him accountable the next morning to something. But it was always
yeah,
done like accountability and love, I think, are two of the like rails, like I almost think of like train tracks that are necessary for you to be respected in the first place,
yeah,
and be able to create the best results that ultimately benefits them because everything you're doing, whether it's holding them accountable, or actually clearly caring and loving, it's all an act of love, and it's a way of expressing that in a world that is
yeah,
lacking that in leadership,
yeah,
especially.
absolutely. And this is also, it's a family business. My husband and I
Mhm.
run Gozynta, and actually our daughter's our director of marketing. And
Nice.
but Jennifer's your vice president of finance. What does it mean to build something alongside your spouse, and what does that add that a typical business partnership doesn't?
You know, it's interesting. Like in my marriage, the more time we have apart, the more friction there is. The more time we have together, it just all works itself out.
Mhm.
And I don't get to work with her as much as I would love to. She's very she takes care of our family really well. I have three little kids, one 15-month-old, and she homeschools them. Like we love on them a lot. We're really active as a couple, like helping them train into the world that they're going to live in. And that was our motivation for homeschooling, was not just the educational, well, it's educational, but not just the academics, but to teach them some of the lessons that I've been learning in leadership and business and all that. So yeah, I'd say it's been good. I would love to have more of her time and focus. When I gave her the title of like the VP of Finance, because she basically moves money around and makes it do things. I'm focused on
Important
like
job.
making it, making sure there's profitability, and
Mm,
and she makes it add to the quality of our life and stewards it
mm,
really well. So yeah,
that's great. And almost 20 years is a very long time
I
for a
know.
business. I know from talking to MSP owners that there are moments in any journey where you seriously wonder if it's going to work. Did you have that time?
Definitely during the Tim situation. In fact, I would have thought that the company was going to end. So right after he slid that paper across the table, it was only a few weeks after that my other employee quit, and I found
Mm,
myself with no employees, all my clients, and trying to start over pretty much from scratch. Um, our response times were horrendous, like 2 weeks. We had
mm,
100+ tickets on the board at any given time, and I was trying to learn the technical stuff that I had relied on my best friend for, that I didn't know personally. So I had like some technical stuff to learning. I had to like onboard and train. It was really hard because I remember that shortly right after that, like I had a meeting with a client and a server went down and I couldn't be in two places at once. So I called my wife and said, "Hey, can you call this client and let him know the situation and that I can't make the meeting?" And so I got the server and I got it back online and got them back. Well, the client with the server down was really frustrated, and the client that had their meeting not happen was really frustrated. And they both, over the next within 30 days, like canceled their
mm,
contracts with us. And I just felt like it was all going to fall apart. Especially that was probably the lowest point in that like journey, because I'm like, okay, so I have 2/3 of my clients left, but how many am I actually going to retain? So I
right.
basically went to them and I told them I did not start a company to run it this way. This was not a situation I ever thought I would be in, but I'm going to learn from this and I'm going to fix it. And if you can be patient, I promise it won't always be this way.
Mm,
So that was good, but it was still like I was looking for a silver bullet to fix this and there wasn't one. There's too
right.
much that had to happen. And I
Mm,
was working 17-hour days for like a year. It was about a year before I felt like our service was again respectable. So I wasn't making sales because I didn't have any like I didn't think our current clients like that we owed their business. Like I felt like we weren't performing even at our contractual SLA level that we should. So that was definitely the moment that I thought this is going to end. Honestly, I was just like, God, I'm just going to give this to you. Here's a crappy company. I'm going to be the operating officer, and
yeah.
you do what you want with it. Because I literally thought like we weren't going to make it. But I remember at that time, another friend that I had offered me like $500,000, and just as a test, like, hey, if
Mm,
I gave you $500,000, would you come work for me and bring your clients over and we'll start over together? And I was like, it's appealing. I mean, I would pay off
mm,
my mortgage, have money left over, no more financial struggles, right? But I'm like, I won't have learned from this situation. I won't have
mm,
learned how to dig myself out.
yeah.
So,
And you know what? You really told an important lesson there, or learned an important lesson there. One of the things that I see with MSPs a lot is, something happens And sir, it's certainly not about making continual excuses, but something happens and going to clients and saying, I'm going through this. This is not my intention. I want to provide something better, and I will do that. That is such an important thing because nobody wants to have that conversation with any of their clients. It's like, I can
Mm,
fix this, I can fix this. But doing that sooner than later is such an important lesson because people are so understanding. Sure, there could be the one that doesn't. But for the most part, every time I hear the story of going to customers and explaining what's happening, they're very understanding because we're all humans and we all are small businesses and we all have this kind of thing that happens.
right.
So I think that's really important and kind of leads into the next question. One of your core values is grit, and all of your story that you told before is pure
Mhm.
grit. You literally define it as doing the right thing regardless of external factors. What moment actually tested that? When did you have to choose grit over the easier path?
Oh my, I feel like it's a very common thing. I'm like, every time I lose money, it's because it goes back to actually why I started the company. When I told you, like, some things don't always go right, but I can usually make it right. That usually has a cost. And just being able to know that that's important, I'm going to sleep well at night and be okay. I don't know. It's funny because like the lost opportunity, lost money. I'm sure every business feels this way. That you can look back and go like, boy, if I knew today what I back then, like what would have been the impact or what would you do differently? But you can't just beat yourself up either. And then the grit was, I think, like I was homeschooled my whole life, and there was a season where my dad lost his job and we had no prospects for income, a family of six, and we bought a house from the 1800s as a family, and it became like a summer homeschool project, and we flipped this incredible house. It had a water tower because there was no water pressure, three beehives in the water tower, and we had to live in this house. And it was, oh boy, I can go into a lot of details. The point is it was a lot of work, a lot of physical work. And I think that's where grit actually started to be formed for me. It was in those early years because we flipped that house, and before it was cool, before Fixer Upper was a thing. In that cave, it gave us enough money to move to Colorado Springs and pay cash for the place we have out here because California is expensive, right? So that was helpful. And then have some money to put into our first investment. And we just kept working that system over and over. So my whole upbringing, I was doing a lot of manual labor with my dad, flipping houses. And that translated into that really hard year. If I hadn't worked so hard, if my customers didn't see me working so hard to try to serve and take care of them, it's one thing to like building trust is foundational, but you have to actually execute to keep it. And I felt like that's where grit is. One of the concepts of grit that I love, because it's probably my favorite value,
Mhm.
is that our actual values come out during long, hard seasons in life. Everything before that is aspirational. Like, I love the idea of this, right? But when you get to live it, then it becomes real and ingrained.
Mhm.
And so there's lots of opportunities that we get to be tested in
Yeah,
our values, and we get to make our decisions going back to looking at our values. But that's today. Like today, our team is very well aligned with our core values. It was probably still, gosh, a decade before we got to that point.
well, going into that difficult year, what was there a single decision or was there a turning point? Was it hiring someone, changing the model that changed the direction of the business?
Um, I think grit is what got us through that
Yeah.
season. I still didn't know how to hire. I was still very new into learning ideas of entrepreneurship.
Mm.
The first business book I read was perfect. It was the E Myth. It's the
Oh,
entrepreneurial myth, right? It's all
yeah.
about I'm an entrepreneur because I spent $125 on an LLC and I'm incorporated now and I'm an entrepreneur and putting that a label. And then like that wasn't me. I slipped into that technical role quite literally. And yeah, that was I lost my train of thought.
It's okay. Take your time.
What was the question?
This was, if there was, looking at that year that was so difficult, if there was anything that a single decision, you were talking more about grit and kind of continuing through grit to get to that next kind of easier part. You were new at hiring, you had just read E-Myth. And these were things that had helped
Right.
get to that next level.
Yeah. So at that season in our life, I think grit is what kind of got us back to like decent service and rehiring people. I still didn't know how to hire great, great people. So I think the next, gosh, I don't remember how many years it was now that I think about it, but it was about 2016. I had now consumed a lot of books. I knew a lot. I was slowly trying to implement it, but I still wasn't getting the results in my business the way I wanted. And I remember talking to a business leader who talked about a CEO is always looking forward. A manager is always trying to take this vision the CEO has and then translate that into day-to-day outcomes. And there's a big gap between manager and CEO that most companies have, and it's a strategy. And I was like, ooh, that might be the piece I'm missing. So it was in 2016 that I joined True Methods. Their Formula One program is what they called it at the time. Now I
Yeah.
believe this content is free. Everybody should learn about Formula One. But I went through 100 hours or whatever it is of content of how to build a framework around getting results. I'll give you an example. Kind of in the early days, I was talking about how having the right systems and processes and automations are really powerful. That's being proactive. That's the proactive side. The reactive side is closing tickets. I had this proactive concept before it was as much of a buzzword as it is today, but executing that was really hard. It all just was as good as the employee I happened to hire and who was ever, whoever's doing the job and how proactive they were. I didn't have a framework or process to instill that and to get really good results. So we were still struggling financially. I've always told Jen, I think I was making about 60,000 a year for like at least a decade. And I kept telling Jen, like, hopefully there'll be money at the end of the year and this will all be worth it. And then we'd pay that last final tax bill and we'd be barely in the black. And I'd be like, maybe next year. But then finally, the year after year, I was just told Jen, my wife, I was just like, I believe someday this will be worth it.
Mm. That's great. And that's one of the things that we do at Gozynta Consulting is that strategy piece because it takes a long time to learn that. We do quarterly meetings, strategy meetings with MSPs where we, in the annual, set a goals to work
Mhm.
for with KPIs to measure how you're getting there. And then we break them into quarterly goals. And that's kind of building that strategy together. And then you meet with your consultant every week to see how that's coming along. And it's a great way to have kind of an external viewpoint and getting somebody to think through the problems they have and like start working towards it. And instead of, at the end of the year, be like, oh, we didn't get there again, kind of having that plan and adjusting as needed because you also need to be kind of fluid in it's not a strict game entrepreneurship. Things
Right.
happen and you kind of need to be really fluid there also, but having that goal and trying to always reach for it, it's so important for MSPs to do, I think.
Well, I think this was kind of moved into the next chapter was I was getting this information, which was helpful, and we were working on implementing it. But that application piece was really hard. Part of the challenge was knowing what's possible. And I remember being in some industry events and I'd see these people on stage and I'd be like, wow, this is somebody who's actually made it, and I'm like, that, what would it be like to be them? I would have these kinds of thoughts. And and then I would wonder what's my potential, I think is the next thing. So when you get to see what somebody has actually done, that is really helpful in knowing what's possible because now you've seen it. It's not just a thought in your head. Like, I think working with peer members was pretty transformative for us because, well, I'll tell you that story real quick. So it's 2020. It hadn't happened yet. A buddy of mine who was also in Shoot Methods encouraged me to go to Schnitzfest, which is a really funny name, funny conference, but really get information. And I remember Gary Pika standing on stage announcing a brand new peer program. And I'm like, this is the piece I've been missing. I've been getting all this knowledge, even from their program, right? But I was struggling implementing it and getting the results. So I literally ran to the sign up table. I was just like, I'm in, I'm done. I need help. And I can't get that from my employees. My wife can only do so much in this area. I need someone that has experience and be able to walk through this. And the other thing I'll say is like being an entrepreneur can be very lonely. And that's how it had been up until that point.
Yeah.
It had been quite a struggle. So I ended up being selected for Pod 3, which was their third group that they formed. I'm like, I missed 1 and 2 somehow. I guess I didn't run fast enough. Um, and so I joined that group, and much to my surprise, the group unanimously asked me to lead the group because they needed to
Oh,
select someone to be a captain. So here I am, January or whatever our first meeting was. I don't think it was quite in January, but at the very beginning of 2020, I'm now selected as a captain. And in my mind, I'm still 22. Like, I don't know why in my brain, I just feel like nothing has changed. I haven't aged since then, although I'm sure I have. And I'm looking at these like more seasoned business leaders, wondering why in the world should I be leading this group, or why do they want me? What do they see in me? And I'd say one of the assessments I took describes how what makes you really successful and what holds you back. And my top one is I'm like highly confident over here, but on the flip side, I have a lot of self-doubt. So if you heard what's in my head, I sound so confident, but then it's like, no, you can't. No, you can't. There's always this like devil's advocate in my brain.
yeah.
Um, but I accepted the role and I with enthusiasm because I knew if I was leading something, I would get more value. And I was all sold on I want to get as much value out of this program as I can. And if that means holding other people accountable, then I will have to hold myself to even a higher standard. And our first meeting, COVID had happened. It became virtual, and we were all trying to fumble and figure out what this new
Oh,
peer group would look like and how to get results. And I'd say I pretty much treaded water for that first year. I mean, in theory, I probably wasted a year that first year where we weren't making progress. But sometimes those are the reset years that real change happens. And I think business leaders are going to run into that. The realization I had that year, especially during COVID, was that my team was mostly like a lot of them were highly entitled people that didn't share my values. And some of that was my fault. I didn't make them as clear in part of our
okay.
hiring process. And the biggest problem is my director of operations. And I had been working with him at this point, I think, for like 2.5 years, and we just could not get alignment. And it was clear, and he even would tell me he wasn't happy. And I was just like, "You're not happy. Let me give you a severance package and give you the opportunity to find another job," which he was not thankful for. Yeah, which makes sense. That was an uncomfortable thing and an uncomfortable
Yeah.
conversation. But that started like this domino effect where I was hiring people that were highly bought into my vision, my values, and where we wanted to go. And here's another book suggestion for people that, I mean, I'm sure the audience knows about Patrick Lencioni, but I read the book, The Ideal Team Player, and they talk about hungry, humble, and smart. That hungry means that work ethic. Maybe they're flipping houses with their dad when they were young. I don't know. But like, you have to have that work ethic. I can't teach that. Humble, I feel like IT people are either humble or not. If they're not humble, their value is in what they know, and it's really hard to train them. And when they make mistakes, they're mortified and they shun them and they don't learn from them. So
Mm,
like humble became, critically important. And they had to have some people smarts. They had to know how, when they were communicating with other people, how that was being perceived, whether it was with their team or with their customers. And some people could be a little bit abrasive or selfish, self-seeking, and it was affecting service quality. And so like getting all three of those was great. So I would end up like hiring a really great employee. I'll give you an example. Our team was closing for maybe 6 tickets a day, but mostly closer to 4. And I hired somebody that was closing 18 on average. And the rest of the team resented him. They hated him. It looked bad. They tried to sabotage his work. It was like terrible. And I wasn't overly concerned. I'm like, this problem isn't going to be solved overnight. But eventually, one more person would leave, and I'd hire another rock star. By the way, we call our service desk our remote operations center. So I call our
okay.
team rock stars. So
I
because
like
they're
that.
awesome. Yeah. So anyway, so we had hired another rock star, and then like another person would leave, and I'd hire another one, and slowly but surely, my entire company turned over, except for my lead engineer, who's phenomenal, still with me today.
Amazing.
And I like to joke, my wife still too. I didn't lose her, so she's still working with me. But literally, like everyone else turned over that second year in the business. So this is where I like to quote. I think it's Peter Drucker. It says, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Mm,
So when
mm,
you have a really strong, really healthy culture that is employee centric, not customer centric, customers get really good service when employees are being taken care of really well. So that was
Yeah.
another lesson I learned during that time.
And I do think
Um,
that's one of the most
yeah.
important ones. That's one of the things that we do talk about a lot is the importance of really knowing your values and putting them in literally everything, every job description. It should be very clear what the value set is, not just these are our values and list them, but describing them in a way so that when someone's reading about, do I want to work at this company, that it's like, oh, this might not be for me, or this is just where I belong.
Mhm.
And then finding ways to get them to tell stories that, like helping your father build a house, that gets those stories out, not in a way where somebody's trying to say the right answer because they read your job description and want to show that sure, they can be that, but also kind of getting into them naturally telling things about themselves. And I think that's one of the biggest things is getting that right team. Because we started 10 years ago with Gozynta, and we certainly had the wrong team. We inherited some. We were hiring for more for skills and really thinking about what was that team member that would work well with the rest of the team. And sometimes we had ones that were abrasive, and we lost people that were really good people
Mhm.
because they didn't want to work with that because that was abrasive and not fun for anybody. And
Yeah.
they had a choice. We didn't. So, well,
Yeah.
we did have a choice. And that's kind of where we got down to really hiring for our values. We built our company from our values and then started to realize, oh, this is the most important thing is getting that right team in. And I think you're right, is this is that piece, having
Yeah.
that team that can do it with you and understands and is right there with you, having a great time, that makes it a wonderful place for everyone.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And that was the season that we tripled our business
yeah,
and profits probably,
yeah,
maybe more than that. We had as high as like 45% net profits in quarters,
amazing.
which just seemed ridiculous. Like, especially in our industry when most are probably like at eight. I know for most of my career, it was probably zero if you really did the math right. But it was transformative and it was energizing. And what we started noticing is that our team started to have that spirit of winning and they'd
Mm,
get excited about it and they would celebrate each other and because they know where we're going into success. So it was less of a siloed like what's in it for me
mm,
perspective into like seeing how the company was advancing. And then every year our benefits got better, our raises got ridiculous. And I kept reminding, this isn't sustainable. I can't give you 17% raises every year. But I remember one year like that was like the average. I remember in
it's amazing.
2024 we grew 39% that year. So that was the next 2025 was our next reset, I feel like year. Like it's funny how like having a business makes you grow. Like you
Mm,
grow or die, or because so in 2025 I realized like I was still like the chief everything officer. I was
mm,
still solving the hardest client complaints, relationship issues, the a lot of the technical issues, all the operational issues, like everything was funneling through me. And I felt like I was like the weakest link, the one holding the company back. And the reality I was. And it's because I hadn't built a leadership team. So in 2025, I hired initially a director of operations. He later got promoted to being my COO because he's phenomenally gifted and strategic. And he is, I'm a visionary. Like if you've ever done the crystallizers
yeah.
assessment, I'm a strong visionary and he's a very strong integrator. And so, in some of our assessments were exact opposites in our strengths. And that can be terrible or amazing depending on the level of trust and
Mhm.
communication. So right away when I hired him, we worked together to implement the EOS framework, which is
Mm,
the
yep.
book traction, getting that in place. And then we expanded our leadership team to a third person. And so that's where we are today. We have a leadership team of three. All problems float up to leadership team and get solved every week. And so we've got this cadence with every department now where problems are getting solved and things are happening. And I'm not the one pushing all of you know, the levers to make it happen. And now we're in, especially in this year, we're in a season, we're in a focus where we're really getting our focus tied to our highest value work. And this kind of ties into the AI piece. And I got an executive assistant who's also phenomenal. I'm like so blessed to have such really talented people working
It's
alongside
great.
me. That's been really good to start freeing up an amazing amount of time to
Mm,
focus on things that I'm naturally really gifted in. So I have this retirement concept of retiring from everything I don't like to do. It sounds really
mm.
selfish, but that means you're doing the things that you're really gifted in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And you should definitely delegate down. And then, if it's really, sometimes it's not even important, maybe it doesn't even need to happen, but you should definitely be using your time to do those things that make you happy and you're brilliant at. Yeah. Because
Yeah. Well,
those same things could be something that someone else loves and is brilliant at.
well, and
So
that's
that,
exactly what my executive assistant says that she's like, Matt, I love this kind of work. I'm like, I hate this kind of work. She's like, bring it on. She's ready for it. So it, I also went through the 6 types of working genius with my
Mhm,
team. So this is a really helpful another assessment people can take where there's 6 categories. 2 of them are areas that you're energized and you love and you're actually very competent in. 2 of them are things you're really competent in, but maybe they don't give you the energy. And the other 2 things are things that you're neither energized or competent in. People on the bottom 2, they're really good at avoiding those things, but the middle is a trap. They're like, I'm really good at this. A lot of people are stuck in jobs that are draining because they're
mm,
competent in it, but it's not doing the things that actually energizes them. So, like my friend's dad, who would come back grumpy every day, he was in that situation doing a job that wasn't actually giving him any life at the end of the day, sucking it. And but he was probably really good at it, and he stayed at it for as long as I knew him, and that's miserable. So people get stuck in life areas where they feel like they don't have a choice and they have to do these things that they're good at because they're good at it. And so being able to get refined, and I really felt like the Rocket Fuel book was helpful for my visionary, for my integrator and I to really get alignment here of doing and focusing on the things that are life giving that we're actually really good at. And I had told the team this year, I'm like, we're just focused on stability. We've had a lot of change. Like right now, we just want to stabilize and just it's norming. So it's like forming, storming, norming, performing. Like let's start norming again. But when you have a really good integrator working with you, solving problems, it accelerates business, but without all the problems because those are getting solved. So I wouldn't know. We probably just skipped norming and went right to performing, to be honest. It's been a really, really fun
that's
year
great.
so far.
And that's, going back to the assessment, it's a really great thing to do for MSPs to do with their team fairly regularly. You could have somebody just kind of in the wrong seat, and
Hmm.
it could change their whole quality of life. Because if you do an assessment like that and you find that this person loves that task or this person would like to try this task, then you can kind of switch things around in a way that you just didn't know because you didn't ask the question. So that's a really great way to see where people are at and be honest with yourself too. My husband is a visionary. I'm the integrator. So,
Hmm.
so we've been doing this from the start. And it's interesting to bring other people into the team with things that maybe we have now grown to not enjoy as much and push those along to some other people who are very excited for the challenge of
Hmm.
researching some kind of tax thing. I don't want to do that ever. So it's nice to kind of start to hand those off and free yourself to start to dream or figure out how to integrate something or whatever based on whether you're a integrator or not. But
Well, like visionaries have a lot of ideas. They're not all good. And integrators are phenomenal at weeding through them and putting guardrails around them or squashing some, and that
yeah,
doesn't feel good for
yeah,
a visionary. So like having that high level of trust is really helpful because now I'm free to visioneer a lot more than I've ever done. Like we've made so many advancements in different areas of service, especially on the more proactive strategic side of the business. And it's just the gates have just been opened up to be able to do
that's
this
great.
and then like not drive the company off the cliff in the process. So
Right.
I love that. I love that I get to spend a lot of time learning and
Mm,
thinking and putting ideas out and then finding what works well and then implementing them. But implementing isn't my strong suit. So
yeah,
having somebody that says, "Hey, this is really a good idea. Let's build a framework around this." Like, okay,
yeah.
now this is something that's repeatable is really powerful. So I don't know if I wasn't an MSP owner, I think I'd want to work with probably MSP, any business owner, but probably MSP owners to really help them unlock some of these things because there were just a few, like we've discussed a lot of them, changes in mindset that, we've been like 25% net profits and
Mm,
above for
mm,
quite a while. We've now reinvested, so we're a little lower, but we're still really good, well above, I'd say, the industry average. But we're having fun. I've told my team, if this just becomes no fun, like I'll stop growing. Like,
yeah.
or if we're growing too fast and like I care about I care about sustainability and that this
Mm,
is something that we can do for the long term. So everyone in their roles, I'm really trying to dial that into being the right roles and it's something they enjoy. And so Mondays aren't a drudgery for them.
yeah.
And, I think for the most part, we've done that pretty well. As you're always getting stretched when you grow because complexity increases. So there's always more energy that goes into that. But having that as kind of a ground level and now being on the fairway where we can do this for our team has
Yeah.
been really great.
It's super. And that's a great thing to look at. A lot of MSPs, they're stuck in that firefighting stage of just going through the tickets and doing the next thing and paying the bills and not taking the time to figure out the fun of it, the figuring
Mhm.
out how to grow it, learning some of this framework that is so amazingly helpful. And we do it goes into consulting. That's why we try to get people to slow down and take time out. We know everyone's busy, but it's so important to take time to work on your business, just not in your business, because so many people are caught up in it owning them. They can't kind of see the forest from the trees. So it's so important to be able to take that step back and look at it from a different level. Put your head
I
up a
feel
little.
I feel
Mm,
really fortunate because I told you I was really passionate about IT at a pretty young age. I didn't ever think I would find something I'm more passionate about, but really it really comes down to is I just love helping people and having like this platform to impact more and more lives. I mean, last year was a year I decided it would almost be irresponsible to not grow this company because
mm,
I'm seeing the positive impact it's having for my employees and our clients and just having it's making an impact in our community. We're setting the bar a little higher than what some of our clients are used to receiving in terms of service and results. And I love just pushing that bound. So it's really fun to realize that this whole entrepreneurship and being a visionary is like more rewarding than technology ever was. And
oh,
not everybody is going to find that. Everyone has something that is really rewarding that they enjoy. Some MSP owners might want to stay in that technical role because that is what gives them the most joy, and that's good. You just have
yeah,
to then bring other people alongside you that have these strengths that can
yeah,
help your company move forward. Otherwise, you hit an impact zone.
yeah,
You don't grow.
absolutely. Well, you made a statement that I think is important. The MSP who thrives will be those who blend smart automation with strong operations and human-centered service. This
Hmm.
is a deliberate ordering. So, what does it look like in practice to use AI and still keep the human at the center?
This is why I don't think humans are going to be replaced when it comes to AI. There is it's an incredibly valuable tool, but that human element, I think the more we see things shifting toward AI, there's going to be more of a desire for human chat
Mm,
interaction, a human on the phone. And I think the reason why is like AI can be nice. It can imitate being nice really well, but it can't really care. It doesn't have feelings and it can't really serve. It can do tasks, but it's different than when I show up and I work with a client and I care about their business and I find a way that they can be more profitable. And it wasn't an IT fix, to do that. So I think we're going to see as more and more things are moving toward AI, this strong desire for that in-person, face-to-face relationship building piece of it, which is hard because tech is such a task-oriented world
mm,
that I think the companies that I see that are doing really well have that really strong relationship piece. And I really think with continued AI development, that's going to continue even more where people are going to be hungry for that.
yeah. So I wanted to talk, we only have a few more minutes left. I want to talk about the MSP Titans AI Powered
Yeah.
Award, but I want to actually, you are a finalist for that. And but also you have 125 five-star reviews, and that probably to some doesn't feel like that should belong to the same company on paper. That's that question. But it sounds like they're actually the same thing. The automation enables that relationship rather than replacing that. Do you think that's a fair read?
Yeah, so like, I mean, I kind of hope some of our employees' jobs get replaced with AI because then I can put their time more focused on creating value and having relationships. Um, like the AI is actually freeing up a ton of time. So I'll give you simple examples. I meet with prospects and I meet with clients a lot. I do a lot of strategic consulting. The note taking that's like really basic AI, but we've got models that are built that help us with strategic thinking based on conversations and
Mm.
and recommendations. And so I've built some models around that where it's just taking my visionary perspective and strategic mind and like amplifying it so that I'm creating more value, that I'm sitting down in front of a client and having those conversations with. So that's how I use AI. I use it powerfully, especially in the thought leadership area. And then operationally, like it actually breaks out the tasks and my executive assistant then assigns them to all the different people. So I can have conversations and then I don't have to do anything and know that I've just set motion where professional services is going to now schedule out a new project and send a quote, or procurement, or our alignment department, or all these different things like can just get into motion without any effort from me. So it's freeing up a ton of my time to be more relational. So that's where I think kind of the sweet spot is to use it in the areas that it's really good to drive the strengths you already have further and then be able to execute, of course, better at the end. So we're finding new ways, it seems like every week as these models are changing. I would say Claude seems to be the most like human feeling
Mm.
and how it communicates and how it talks, like if you chat with it and for thought leadership and things like that. But, I'd say ChatGPT feels a lot more strategic. And if you want to think outside the box, it seems like I get a little bit more on the ChatGPT side, but they're just different. And sometimes you can use them together. You can pit one against the other and
Oh,
get them
interesting.
working, and then you end up with the best of both worlds. So yeah, and I think we're also entering a new era where AI is going to become a lot less just chat, but it's going to get access to more and more to actually getting work done. I'm seeing a huge shift in that right now. So we're going to see that area explode this year, especially where, work that took 140 hours is going to take 20 hours. One of my clients just had that experience. We have another client that they have two full-time people doing a job that they don't have to do because the AI does it better than what humans ever could have. So
Huh.
we're doing a lot of engagements like that where we're starting with understanding how work gets done, how money comes into the company and gets billed, and all the systems that are involved. And then we look for that mundane, repetitive work that could be systemized and automated to free people up to do higher value work. And that's my last point I'll say is when I'm talking to business leaders, I am finding that I ask them, what's your highest value work? They usually say this thing, but most of my time is being spent here. And that's the big problem that I think MSPs that are forward thinking could really solve for their clients is to get them doing higher value work.
That's great. Thank you, Matthew. And genuinely, if this conversation landed for you, and I really think it will, share it with one person in your world who's trying to figure out how to grow with technology without growing away from their clients. If you want more information about consulting through Gozynta, go to our website at www.gozynta.com/consulting. And I'm Heather Johnson. This is the MSP Growth Podcast. We'll see you next time.